Okay, so I think we're ready to go. Okay, so just for those that have joined us, I say thank you very much for tuning in for this watch along of Superman the movie, the 2000 special edition version. So if you just want to, just like me and Peter have just done, hopefully a bit easier than we did. If you just want to pause your copy of the film at the Warner Bros. Logo, and then in about 30 seconds or so, we'll all press play and start the film. So just give everyone 30 seconds just to get their copy together and pause. If anybody has any issues hearing me or anything, do let me know. Any issues of that I can help you with before we start. Otherwise, we get started shortly. Okay. So am I sounding okay, Peter? Is my audio okay for you?
Yes, I can see you clearly and hear you very well.
That's great. Okay, lovely. So, okay. So I think we'll make a little start. So, yeah. So I'll do a little countdown from 5, Peter, and then we'll
Maddie,
on the film, if that's okay.
just 1 second. Yep, I'm just going to get Madeline back. We'll press the button.
Ready?
They're going to count down from 5.
Yeah.
Okay, ready now.
Okay. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play.
Go.
Okay. Warner Bros. Logo. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Peter, was how did you come aboard the film in the first place?
Well, because I worked with the cinematographer Jeffrey Unsworth, and Jeff was offered the film. I went to meet Dick Donner. We had a really great meeting. I have no idea what was said, but we never stopped laughing because Dick was then, and always was, a great character. Never took life too well. I think he took life seriously, but he pretended he didn't. So it was quite an exciting time to do this film because it needed a huge budget. People haven't really flown people that well before. There's a couple of films, but nothing really worked well. Unfortunately, our production office wouldn't spend the money early on with a small crew just to test flying, landing, because the flying's not that bad. It's the landing and carrying on with the scene and the taking off. Otherwise, every time someone lands, you've got to cut, and that's really boring. And Chris was fantastic physically. He could land, walk a couple of paces and go to a scene. So that's really what we had to try and do to make it different to other films, which were all too cutty.
Yeah. We're watching the marvelous credit sequence, and I think this was inspired by a teaser trailer that was put together largely for the crew and cast morale, because it's been a long shoot and people were getting a bit sort of tired, and then this wonderful teaser was put together. And what was it like seeing the first teaser and that excitement for the film?
Yeah, I think we knew, because it's such a huge budget and not all that much belief that the film deserved it. So we knew we had to make the teaser really work to what. So people said, "Yeah, I want to see this film."
Yeah.
And with Chris, you couldn't have had a better person, playing Superman. He was very, very nervous, and obviously this is the biggest, it's a life-changing event in his life,
Oh, yeah.
And he knew that, and he wasn't the kind of gung-ho kind of type of person. He was a very quiet, intellectual person. So he knew what he was going into. Dick Donner's totally the opposite. Dick was all hands and legs going all over the place and full of enthusiasm, always getting a crew up with his enthusiasm. So we kind of knew we could be making a film that was special, And the worrying bit was we were having to fight a production office, English production office, that didn't seem to have the same confidence in the film that the shooting crew had. I can say that all now because who fucking cares what they think now?
Well,
I know
yes.
what happened, and
Yeah.
I know it was in spite of a lot of people.
Yeah.
The film was made as well as it was, not because of them.
Yeah. And Stuart Baird, the editor, Claire, just come up. Again, I think a big part of success is down to Stuart's editing. John Williams, of course, with the score. And it was. Did you enjoy the seeing it in the Albert Hall, the concert and the orchestra? It was quite a good.
Oh, that was decades later, and was very exciting, and you felt it was what the film deserved. You know, it always amazed me that we had to fight so hard to get the facilities, the money, the enthusiasm from production office to make the film that we made. You know? And that's why I have such a huge respect for Dick Donner, who during even the darkest days, and there were a few dark days, kept the crew going, kept himself going. I'm sure sometimes at night he laid awake, look at the ceiling and think, what the fuck, you know? Because what it should have been, because the shooting crew were fantastic. We should have not had to fight the production office for every single thing we wanted. Yeah, especially the tests, because no one had really flown someone properly, and we wanted to do it. But, you could fly through when he could land or walk and go into a scene, not as his feet touched the ground, cut. You know, which most films were done in those days. So that had to be rehearsed. And I say Chris was more coordinated than any of the stunt people we had, you know, and they were okay. I'm not criticized them, but Chris really kind of had a great attitude. As he landed, it immediately could go into a scene. He wasn't thinking, "Oh fuck, I've just landed. This is great."
It was always
that was the beginning of the scene.
It was always very, very graceful, wasn't it? His movements and and we're just about to see Marlon Brando, and of course you were behind the camera at this point with Marlon. I just don't know what you remember about working with Marlon Brando and filming these hugely complex scenes. Well,
I think working with Brando was one of the kind of highlights of my life. I mean, as anyone my age at that time had seen all his films, and he just changed the whole genre of acting. And he just came on the set and more or less said, just tell me what to do and I'd do it. I dealt with lots of kind of complications. He knew what that we would tell him exactly physically what he needed to do. And also that we had to have, because he was insistent, he didn't learn lines ahead of time. We had sometimes 2 or 3 cameras on him, and each one had his own teleprompter. So he could look at anywhere, at the camera, between the cameras, and read the lines off, which he did very well. If you watch him, you see sometimes he looks down. We had a video on just below his eye line, so he could look down and see it then. And when he put little baby Superman into the capsule to send him off to Earth, it was a very delicate scene. He put him into the capsule, and the baby, 6 months old, I thought what he was now, looked, I thought, this is okay, and turned off the video. Just leant across and turned off the video screen. So suddenly Marlon didn't have his lines. So it's so sweet when I think about it now, because Marlon explained to the baby that he shouldn't turn off the video. And the baby's like 6 or 9 months old, looking at him thinking, "Ga, ga, ga." And we're all trying to keep serious about this, because anyway, so we took the video a little bit further away from the baby. He still looked around to see if he could turn it off, and then Marlon could react to the baby and also read his lines off the video screen. And then even at times with Susanna York, he borrowed the Chinograph pencil from my assistant. I wrote lines on her forehead, so when we're doing over the shoulders, he's looking into her eyes, but he's reading here on her forehead his lines, So it was a very unusual experience. I mean, at the time, he was after the most expensive actor in the history of filmmaking.
Yeah, I think it was $3.7 million. I think he got for 11 days.
But he told them, and he told us. He said, "I told them I don't do overtime. I don't know my lines before I come on the set." So he said, "They're silly enough to accept this, then I'll do the film." So and he loved it. I mean, he did love the crew, and the crew loved him. I mean, they all had great respect for him and what he'd done in the past. I mean, we were all brought up on his movies. Because he changed the whole acting in films. Well, I think he did anyway. I mean, you could say that James Dean did, but I think Brando was the first really to make you totally believe you were seeing a real person in a real scene, not in a film. So it was I mean, I had tremendous respect for him. And he'd come in the morning, he'd get his production chair, and he had all the London newspapers, the Times, the Independent, Telegraph, all sides of the spectrum. And he'd put them next to his, and he all day long he'd just be reading the news, and he'd read, as I say, all sides of the spectrum. Some really heavy duty right wing, some left wing, and he just read them. And obviously, in his own mind, he was then going to decide what he wanted to believe.
Oh yeah. We're seeing some lovely miniatures by Dirk Meddings of the outside of the of Krypton. Do you remember Dirk Meddings at all?
Yes, of course I do. Yeah.
Obviously, went on to do achieved his fame through Thunderbirds, of course, and numerous Bond films. His last film was GoldenEye, and he, I think, passed away before the film was released. What was?
I worked with Derek a couple of times, and we had a very good relationship.
I mean, he must have been quite a meticulous person, being a model maker. But what kind of man was he?
He was quite meticulous about what he did. Not a bad thing. He believed what he was doing was, without a doubt, the most important thing on the film. Not the photography that we might be doing, or the acting, or the directing. I think in his mind, what he was doing with his team, Paul Wilson and co, was the most important part of the film. It wasn't the important part. It wasn't the most important part, but it was important. No, he was very much a one-off, Derek.
Oh yeah. What's quite amazing about the scene watching now is the wonderful glowing outfits that they're wearing. Did that pose any issues when it came to photographing it?
Oh, that was huge issues, because they wore this 3M material, which what the movie screens are made of. So it's and it reflects. And you have a light that goes directly from the middle of the lens into their suit, and then we had a dimmer on the light, so you could choose how far you wanted to take. I mean, you could make these people disappear if you turned up the light too much. The costume would take over and their faces disappear, which you thought at the time. I don't think the producers would be over happy if suddenly Brando disappeared. The suit looked lovely, but
Yeah.
but I think we got it right. And Jeff
Mm.
Unsworth was a very courageous cameraman,
Yeah.
and he really went for it. So, and at times we had to persuade, because we had 2 or 3 other units working, and you really had to keep them on the ball because they sometimes wanted to play it safe, and bring the costumes down. We said, no, it has to match what we're doing, and this glow, which I think worked fantastically well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It gives it another world feel, doesn't it? Other
Yes,
world.
it had exactly what we wanted. It looked like a different world. They had a slightly ghost-like image, and it was just getting the balance right, so you could still see the face, but it was still slightly kind of surreal.
We just saw the great Trevor Howard.
Yeah.
Did Trevor Howard leave any lasting impressions on you?
I think it was probably an experience of his life, really, because Trevor Howard had done all those wonderful English dramas with David Lean, and was a really great actor. And suddenly he's walking around in 3M material and saying probably lines that he wasn't that impressed with. But he was a true professional, and he did exactly what was asked for. No, we had a very good we had a very, very good relationship with the actors.
The opening scene is quite complex as well, because with the trial of the 3 villains, you have obviously the mechanical spinning of their prison, but also the different projection screens of all the different 9 elders. Was that a difficult set to work on?
It was difficult because I'm trying to remember now. It's kind of very often a multi-camera setup, so everything. And as you say, you had people in reality, people on a screen, all had to be tied together. And as far as I remember, I haven't seen the film a little while, but it worked very well. And from, I guess, Dick could have taken an easy way out, made it a bit simpler, but he wanted it to be what it was, and I think we succeeded in doing it.
Oh yeah. I think you needed a spectacular opening look and a feel to it, and I think it did it. It provided what was needed for the film. And eagle-eyed viewers will notice one of the elders is a guy called William Russell, who was one of the original Doctor Who companions with William Hartnell.
Yeah.
In the 60s, so it's always a nice.
Yes, I worked with him on Lancelot. Yeah, that was his first, I think, claim to fame. Which we did at Wharton Studios before this, obviously. But
yeah, and thankfully William is still around. I think he's obviously in his 90s, but still he's still going, and a very sweet, kind man. I met him at a convention a few years ago, and it was lovely to speak to.
He's a really lovely, charming man, and not at all. You never felt he's like any kind of superstar. Well, he wasn't a superstar then, but he just did his job. And my memory of him was always a very good, positive one.
Yeah. I mean, the audience might correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the actor who plays the babe in the sequence, unfortunately, I think died when he was a teenager. I think drugs or something was involved. So I don't think he did much screen work in his his years or anything. But I suppose it's things like this that people think, oh, there was a Superman curse and all this sort of thing. But of course, that's obviously just a bit of of course. What was Susanna York like to work with? How did she find getting on with Marlon Brando?
Oh, she was charming. I mean, it's very hard not to fall in love with her, which I think all our young men there we all did. she never experienced anything like this before. And my fondest memory is when Brando took the wax pencil from my assistant, and I borrowed this and started writing on her forehead his lines. You know, you never seen an expression like it, because she took it, you know. So she's standing, lucky, obviously back to camera, and on her forehead he's got his main lines, you know, which of course we had to rub off before we did the reverses on her. But I think she took it all with good humour. I think, as we all did, you know, because I think everyone knew you're doing something rather special.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, when you first heard the idea of Superman, that doing a movie as Superman, what was your reaction? Were you aware of the TV series, other versions of it? Did you think, oh wow, this is going to be good?
Oh yeah, we're very well aware of what happened before. And after meeting Dick Donner, knowing how Jeff Unsworth would make it look unbelievably well, beautiful. And then they went on a recce to Canada to find locations. And I was left there to try and work out the light rig to make the costumes glow like they did. So while they were away for a couple of weeks, I was doing the tests. And when I came back, I showed them the test, which I'm glad to say really worked very well. And it, you know, then Jeff had a little resistance button, and he could, you know, turn it up or down to whatever he wished for. And I must say, a lot of cameramen would have probably lost their nerve, but he kept it glowing. And I think the producers were very worried. They were worried that, you know, they paid all this money for Brando, and you could actually wipe him off the screen if you had the you know, the light box too bright. But I think as far as David Tomlin, the AD, myself, Jeff, Stuart Baird, we thought we were only working for one person. That was the director. And we all believed that his vision was the one that should be put on the screen, not an amalgamation of what producers thought or what other people thought. I always believe, you know, if you get the director, the right director, then follow what his dream is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Would you talk about New York
Just a
City?
minute, my ex-wife is.
Ex-wife?
Yeah,
New
well,
York.
just say what you want to say. Don't whisper that I can hear you. Come back and say it. It's not a secret. Just hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Talk about the
I
blackout
can't,
in New York.
but come forward so I can hear you. I don't understand this.
A funny story. You should lift up the energy. New York City.
I
New York
can't
City.
see what.
New York City. A blackout. You asked. Jeff asked for more lights.
So why are you whispering?
Oh yeah, I've got a note about that, Peter, about the blackout. We'll come to that. But yeah, thanks for reminding us, Madeline. That's great.
Okay.
As saying about the really struck lucky with having Richard Donner as a director, but I think also second to Donner was Tom Mankiewicz, the writer, well, creative consultant as on the film. What do you know about Tom Mankiewicz and how him and Donner worked?
Oh, they worked together very, very closely. You know, Tom was not a precious person. You know, he wrote, he would change things if necessary. I'd say they had a really good, Dick and he had a very good relationship. Tom had a really good sense of humor, which always helps. I mean, some writers, you know, you can't change a single word or a comma, whereas Tom understood, you know, if sometimes you have to change things to make it work, and he did, and I think it all came out for the better.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the most delightful things I thought when we saw the film at the Albert Hall was how many laughs the film got.
Yes,
and it seemed to work just as well as it probably did back in '78.
Yes, that's totally true. Yes, because I was always, because when you work, you're never too sure whether if things work or don't work. And I must say, when we had the first showing in England, and it was a family showing, it was at the Odeon Leicester Square, 1,000 So people, and all the laughter seemed to work in the right place, and it was just a really good experience. And I thought then, well, you've done it, Dick. You know, I know we're a very biased audience, but 3/4 of people there never knew anything about the film. They were family, kids from the family, and it really worked for all ages, you know. And must say, leaving the Odeon Leicester Square, and I saw Dick outside, and I gave him a hug, and I said, I think you know, without a doubt, you know, you've done it. It's exactly as I'd always hoped it would be, and had the right humor, the action was great, the humor was great, the story was good, the acting was superb, it looked marvelous. So, what more can you want?
Yeah, I think it's one of those very rare instances where everything is perfect.
Yeah,
and there's very few films that I can think of that would meet that criteria. Because of course you would have seen the dailies and you have an idea of what you had, but to see the finished film with all the post-production effects, and of course the music as well playing a very
fantastic,
part of it.
And also because Jeff Unsworth died before the film was shown. It was left to me and a couple of others to kind of grade the film the way I knew and that Jeff had wanted.
Yeah.
And so it's quite an emotional, because I'd worked with Jeff for 25, 30 years. So it's a very emotional situation for me to be there. Absolutely. And he not being there, you know.
Did he see any kind of rough assembly before he passed away, or was it?
I don't think he did, no, because he was on tests with Polanski in France.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'd have seen, obviously we saw all the rushes and grading. I'm almost certain he didn't see anything edited.
Yeah.
And I think luckily it was people like Stuart Baird as the editor, who was really fantastic editor and almost a director in his own right.
Yes.
That everyone concentrated on telling the story.
Oh yeah.
Which is I think why the film has lasted so well. You know.
Oh, certainly, and of course, again, go back to the great cast. Glenn Ford, Phyllis Thaxter. Do you remember Phyllis and Glenn Ford?
Yes. I mean, Glenn Ford was like, from my point of view, was like a hero for my youth. You know, Blackpool Jungle was one of the first films I remember coming out of and being so emotional about it. You know, the performance, and of course that was also the start of Blackpool Jungle was the start of rock and roll in many ways, because you had Bill Haley doing the soundtrack, Rock Around the Clock, whatever it was, you know, and so that was a whole change maker musically at that era, you know.
And Phyllis Thaxter, do you remember Phyllis at all?
Remember who?
Phyllis Thaxter played.
Yeah, I remember just that she was very professional, you know, and I think the scene, you know, with the little Superboy picking up the truck was really well done. I mean, it was.
The young kid is played by Aaron Simonsky, I think is how you pronounce it, and he is very good going to conventions, and I think one convention he even turned up with the little
red diaper.
Yes. So he's a great sense of fun, and now of course we've got to have the lovely Jeff East, who again I had the privilege of doing a little interview via email with, and I think he does a really good job capturing Christopher Reeve's performance.
Yeah.
Again, any memories of Jeff and that stick out?
Of Jeff?
Of Jeff East. I
just remember he was No, it was just a lovely kid. I mean, he
Mm.
very dedicated to what he did.
Yeah.
And Dick used to give a lot of leeway to, if they wanted advice, he would give it to them.
Mm.
But I think he wanted them to be as natural as possible, which I think they all were,
Mm.
No, I'm looking at both screens at the same time.
Yeah.
Trying to bring back a lot of memories.
Mm. Yeah, Diane Sherry Case plays Lana Lang, and as lovely as Annette O'Toole was in Superman 3, it's a shame to see Diane come back. But as far as I can recall, I think they wanted to bring her back, but they couldn't find her. I think she went off the grid a little bit.
Really,
ended up having to sort of recast from that perspective. Of course, we've got some great physical effects with the football. I think that was wooden, and it was shot out of a cannon where he kicks the football. So you've got lots of really good practical effects.
Yeah.
As well as the and with Jeffy's running now again, that was done him on wires running again.
Yes.
So.
Oh yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was a great scene actually.
Yeah. It must be one of the more complex to get right.
And make look real as well. I mean, because I watched it now. I know he's on a wire. You totally believe his feet are. Shot it in fairly long grass, if I remember rightly. So you couldn't always tell if his feet were touching the ground.
No. And a lovely cameo from the TV versions of Superman and Lois Lane in the trainers in a second hearing with Kirk Allen and Noel Neal. Yeah. But was it nice to have them on the film and have like
lovely. I didn't know as much as the American side about who they were, but then you learned and you kind of thought, well, this is a very nice touch, and a very touching. And hopefully it got them a little bit of extra money as well towards the end of their career.
Oh yeah, hopefully. And unfortunately, most of their performance was cut from the theatrical version. It wasn't until the TV cuts, and then of course this version we're watching now, that it was restored. But they would have got some attention at the time, of course. And the film is quite distinctive, and I think Tom Mankiewicz always said that he designed Superman the movie to be almost free filmed. You had the Krypton, you had the Kansas-like Smallville section, and of course you had the Metropolis. So it's different styles going on. Did that influence your work in terms of realizing it was shifting?
No, I mean, it probably influenced Jeffrey Unsworth's photography, but I don't remember ever thinking camera-wise, different setups because this is that part of the film, this is the other. You always think about, at least I did, what is the best shot you can possibly do for this sequence,
Yeah.
And then if necessary, fight it. I mean, look at it. Glenn walking up the lane, which was this was before Steadicam, and I had the camera being pushed up on a trolley by about 8 people. And I thought it was going to be too unsteady, and of course it was actually perfect. I didn't sleep for about 3 nights until we saw the stuff, and it was actually looks like a great Steadicam shot. Long before Steadicam, as you can see behind them, you can see there are no tracks.
Oh yeah, it's very effective, isn't it? I think that there is one thing that always stuck out in this scene. It's almost like one of them steps over a rock, and there's a sound of a rock either on the I assume that was, but but that just adds to the realism of the scene, of course. And again, it's very well written, isn't it? It's a very intimate scene between
the writing was fantastic.
And I know Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz always thought the way Glenn Ford has his heart attack, and it's very sort of understated, and it's very very real, I think is a very good end to his performance. Well, what was it like shooting in Canada and the wheat fields? And because I think it was quite late in the season, wasn't it? For wheat?
No, they actually the wheat field we used, they planted that season for us.
Especially for the film. Yeah.
They've been at the art department, and I've been out earlier to say this is exactly where we want to shoot this. And it was perfect. I mean, it's an incredible vista, and looking at it now, I mean, it's a big country. It looks wonderful. I remember tracking through the wheat and thinking how exciting, camera-wise, how exciting this was. I must stop looking at the screen.
Oh, no, it's captivating, isn't it? Just watching the film. And I think the church in the background is a little miniature.
Yes, you pan slowly onto the graveyard.
Yeah. When it comes to shooting miniatures, and is there technicality to doing it and making sure they, to keep the magic of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very lucky, because say Jeffrey was one of the most experienced photographers in the world. John Barry, although he was a very brilliant man, very brilliant art director, and everyone. The nice thing about it, everyone got on so well.
Yeah,
there was no ego, so you could, everyone could discuss what is the best angle, would this work, will that work? On some films, you feel you're dealing more with people's ego than the actual end result. Whereas I think Superman, look at the shot now. I mean, it worked exactly as it should have done. If you needed a wide shot or like now a crane shot just going up, it seemed very natural to do it. And Dick Donner gave you a lot of leeway. Always listen if you had an idea. He might make fun of you a little bit, and very often did, especially me. And especially rushes, he said, "Oh Christ, here we go now. This next shot's not my idea, it's Peter's idea. I shot it just to stop him sulking." And the whole audience, 50 people in rushes look around thinking he was serious, and the shot would come up, and it obviously, hopefully always worked. And it was just Dick having fun and also appreciating what his crew did for him. He knew how much the shooting crew cared for him. I said there were a lot of problems with the production side, and they were, I thought, very cruel to him at times. Instead of backing him, they did the opposite. And what I have to admire about Dick, one of many things, when the film was such an incredible success, and we still had quite a bit of number two to make, he could have come in then and said to all those people that have been arseholes to him, "Oh, fuck off, you're no longer on the film." And I must say, I was hoping he did, but he wouldn't. He said no. He was kind of very forgiving, but he was then determined. He proved he was right, they were wrong, and we made the film that he wanted, and not a film that necessarily a kind of production office wanted.
So when you refer to the production office, Peter, are you primarily referring to Edith Solkind, Alexander Solkind, Pierre Spangler, those people?
Yeah, well, up to a point, I think it's more some of the English, which I'm not going to names now, didn't back us as much as they should to give us some money. And it was big money to do tests, to work things out. Pierre, I think, always tried his very best. And the Solkinds weren't really, they were there, but they weren't really hugely involved in the actual decision making, as far as I could see. I mean, and all that matters to us, I remember, I probably said this before to you, Dick called us into his office one day. There were to David Tomlin, Jeff Unsworth, myself, and a few others, saying that he felt they were about to sack him, and maybe that was true. I don't know. And Dick Lester was about to come on and take over, and I'd worked with Dick Lester, and I must say I liked Dick Lester, but he wasn't the man to take over because Dick just wants to shoot. He had no patience.
Yeah.
I said to Dick Donald, I said, that's not going to happen, Dick, Dick Lester might take over a few months from now when the film is almost finished, but when we have so many problems, there's no way he's going to involve himself in big problems, because that's not the way he was, And it was, that's the way it happened. Anyway, so I think they treated Dick very badly at the end. I mean, I think he found out from an agent that he wasn't really going to finish the film. It was really very badly done. And, I mean, I don't know, 4/5 of the film, 7/8 of the film was pure Dick Donner, his energy, his enthusiasm, his art of filmmaking was him, and that's why I said earlier, when the film became a success, I'd hoped in a way he might get a Reeker's revenge on some of these people, but that's not the way Dick was, and in a way that's a good thing.
Oh yeah.
It brings you above them, not below them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, important to rise above it. I think that this scene particularly, as well as being very touching, very impressively shot. I mean, just to make sure you didn't disturb the week with the camera and crew, was a bit of a miracle.
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite moments, and it is obviously down to the acting, but also your role as well, and of course John Williams' music, is that wonderful panning shot against the sort of move and going through the wheat. And I think Dick Donner said that only you could have done that shot. He was very complimentary in terms of your abilities. And
what happened? We broke for lunch before the shot, and I went back early with my crew and the crane people, and I said, let's try this, because also you couldn't trample over the grass. It had to be, the camera could go through, as you're seeing now, but you couldn't have ruined any of the grass. So it was just a matter of swinging the arc of the Chapman crane slowly forward, and then at the very last moment going over their heads. And I think we only had one take at it, and it was beautiful. Of course, you couldn't have had better. The sky was angry, and it just looked perfect, But I took as much credit as I could for that.
Oh, well, why not? Yeah, so one of my favorite moments, and of course we're getting into the 007 stage, one of the most famous stages in the world for the Fortress of Solitude scenes. And I think it was Les Bowie who did these wonderful matte paintings that, the rigs and everything. Do you remember Les Bowie? And because obviously his contribution is huge.
No, I'd worked with Les. I think it was might have been Genghis Khan as well. It was Les was a character. I mean, a rook. Apart from being a great artist, a great filmmaker, he was someone that was a one-off. And I had many nights with him in foreign countries when I used to wake up in the morning and think, why the fuck did I drink so much? And you go down the set and he'd be just full of life, and you're thinking, I just want to die. And no, he was, a lovely man, a great inspiration for me. There's someone that could really enjoy what he did and not be pretentious about it.
Oh yeah. I think one of my lovely experiences doing things like this is you realise that, sometimes I'm talking to, like yourself, some very, very big names and very experienced and very successful people, and they're so down to earth, and there's no egos or anything like that. So it's
and that's what's great about it. I mean, there's you're there just striving to make it the best possible film you can, and also as close as possible what the director's vision is. What you don't need, and I thought we had it on that film and others, is having to fight, the production, the producers too much, which is mostly Dick's fight. But I kept on thinking, well, every time you see, you could hardly get into rushes on the, like we see rushes lunchtime, not all of them, but maybe half an hour rushes. And you'd almost queue up to get into it because the crew was so enthusiastic. And I thought to myself, well, surely the producers should learn from this. If the crew are that excited, and this is a very experienced crew, maybe we are making something rather special, but I think I don't think they ever, as far as I can remember from Dick, ever came up to him at the end when it became very successful. Said, you were right, maybe we were wrong. They could never do that,
I got the feeling that even when they were making the sequels, they didn't really realize, I think, what they actually had, how good it was, and how good and unique Christopher Reeve was, for example. And of course, then they made Supergirl, then Soul, Superman 2, and obviously that didn't work out well at all. But they never seemed to really value the property perhaps as much as, obviously, as you say, the crew on the first film, and the visions that Dick and Tom had. And I think it's only in later interviews when you see Elias Solkine talking about it, and I think he said, "Oh, we should have just kept on and on and made only now, I think, do they realize, oh yeah, this was something really special." I think that realization came a bit too late, I think, for the producers.
Yes, I think you're totally true. And it's also very hard. I mean, someone, a director, Dick Donner, or anyone saying, you realise we're making something special here, because that sounds so pretentious. You hope that a producer would see the rushes, see the edit, and think, fuck me, this is really more than I ever expected. I mean, all the action was great. The action was great. The action was good. The effects were wonderful. The sets were unbelievable. And I was never too sure. I used to come out of rushes. I used to see rushes every morning, which at about 7:30, or just on our own, sometimes with the editor, before we see them mute, just make sure there's no problems. And then see them lunchtime with the crew when they were all sunk up, And I used to leave the rushes theatre in the morning and be so excited and elated. And Jeff was a very quiet man. I said, Jeff is fucking fantastic. He's we've seen it now mute without any effects, and it still feels marvelous. And of course it was, and but there was kind of a downer from producers looking for what was wrong rather than what was right, which I really don't understand, and I never will, and I don't have to now.
No, of course not. One of the stories that always amuses me is that Christopher Reeve only didn't have any lines with Marlon Brando, but I think he was, like everyone, a huge admirer of Marlon Brando. And the line where at the beginning of this scene where Kal-El says, "Who am I?" to Brando. They wanted to say that live on the set, and do you remember? Because I think Marlon and Dick sort of played a practical joke on Chris. Does that ring a bell at all?
Yeah, it rings a bell. I can't remember too much about it. I mean, Chris was a very serious young man.
Yeah.
Without too much humour, because Dick had enough humour for 5 people, and could really set you up. I mean, he was quite vicious with his humour at times. So, I think he tried to, with Chris, he tried to kind of relax him with his humour, but I don't think it always it worked. So, and Brando is, I mean, he's like a very wise old man. I mean, he's you always felt he knew exactly what he was doing. Sometimes he pretended he wasn't too sure what was going on. He always knew what was going on. I remember he saying to me one morning, because we worked very, very long hours, and he said, "You look tired, kid." I said, "Well, we were here till 10 o'clock last night." He said, "What?" He said, "I left at 7. I said, "No, we had to get this ready and that ready." He said, "You need a fucking shop steward. I'll be your shop steward." He volunteered to be our shop steward, union shop steward, which I think the production office would have died 1,000 deaths if we'd have said to him, "That's a good idea, Marlon, why don't you get in the office?" And he would have done, because he was really a part of the crew. He loved the crew. He knew all your names within a few days. He knew the difficulties of some shots. I mean, some actors have no idea technically how difficult things are, and they don't have to. But Brando did. He understood and accepted the fact that sometimes things are a bit difficult, and you might have to go 3 or 4 times to get it right, And no, I'd say he was one of the best experiences of my life.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're coming up to a very iconic moment with the reveal of Christopher Reeve in the Superman outfit and him flying towards the screen and then banking over the image. Do you remember that moment?
Oh yes, very well. Because that really was our first really flying shot. That was, we did on the H stage at Shepperton. And that was the first time, because he flew from one end of the stage to the other. And because he had such control of his body, and as he passed the camera, he just floated out. He was none of the stunt guys, so they're all very good, ever got the feeling that he got into flying. He really was, and he loved doing it. So we used him nearly as much as we ever could.
Yeah. I get a sense because Christopher Reeve in real life was a pilot, and he was very aware of how you moved, and that probably informed his flying. I guess as Superman.
I didn't know that, but yes, it's true. He understood totally how it should feel and to float in.
The Day Planet set, of course. An awful lot of glass in the Day Planet set. Was that difficult with reflections? And
it was hugely difficult. So what I had firstly, John Barry, the art and the whole art department of people I've known forever, and every big piece of glass we had on a hinge so we could angle it. It looked like it was part of a solid wall or window, but we could always angle it slightly to get rid of anything that was really bad, and I think we succeeded, quite well in that, and it looked, I know it's amazingly hot. I remember seeing the scene now with all the top lights on. I mean, I think when we shot it, because we moved from Shepperton to Pinewood for some reason, I think probably because we couldn't afford to pay the bills, and then at Pinewood, all those overhead lights got the sprinklers going, so it was quite a bad time really, because if this sprinklers are gone, you can't stop the sprinklers. At a certain heat they start, and so but you need all the light to make the set work. So it's trying to get the balance, which Jeffrey Unsworth had to do. The amount of light he needed to make the scene look like it did, but also without flooding the set with flood water.
Oh yeah. Because Jeffrey did use a lot of light, and there's almost a sort of heavenly glow to certain shots. And
I think that it needed that look. The Daily Planet look needed that really kind of look you saw from a lot of American films in the newspaper offices. A lot of top light and it was hot, and but look, I thought looked really great.
Oh yeah. And the wonderful Jackie Cooper as Perry White. I don't know if you remember Jackie Cooper at all.
Oh yeah, he was lovely. He was delightful, and he was such a nice man, and he also put a nice bit of humour into the film. You know, I think. Whereas Chris could do that. I mean, Chris's part as Clark Kent, he couldn't have any humour at all, apart from humour against himself.
Yeah.
But it was no. I think all the actors really were quite fantastic. I can't imagine anyone else but them playing the parts they did. I think the casting, was really superb. You know.
Oh yeah.
And Margot Kidder was lovely. I mean, she's a very vulnerable lady, but she really was good. So.
Yeah, I think she's my, the definitive Lois Lane in my opinion, and the same with say Jackie Cooper. But I believe Jackie Cooper was a last-minute replacement for another actor, I think, who got ill, and Jackie came in, almost the day after. But it's interesting, isn't it, how things, chance and circumstances, and kind of influence things.
Yeah.
I think, of course, Guy Hamilton was originally going to direct the film, because the film had been in development, I think, since '74 or something like that, and it was going to be shot in Italy, but because Guy was a tax exile, when they moved it to England, because the pound is stronger, Guy unfortunately had to drop out, and of course that let Dick Donner come on board.
Which I think was probably a very lucky break for the film.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because Dick's sensibility about the kind of the whole Americano situation was something an English director would never really understand, And
there's reflection in the door here. Is that yourself or Richard Donner? I can never. Or was it another?
It's coming up now.
Oh, I think we just might have just slightly missed it, but there's a little stuck in the revolving door, and you can clearly see a member of the camera crew looking. I think he sees himself, but I can't quite work out who that was.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. I remember many years ago, one of my daughters also told me the same thing after seeing the film about the reflection. So, which I hadn't noticed myself, which shows something about how attentive I was.
Well, I think the thing is, if you're involved in that moment, you're not going to notice it as an audience, and but I'll send you a little screen grab of it, see if we can work out if it was you or Dick Donner perhaps. But of course, these days you'd rub it out digitally, but
easily,
because I mean, you worked on some films that were in a digital era, Batman and Robin, for example. I mean, although not compared to where digital is now, but did you find it such a difference working say on Superman to then working on later Batman films, and from a
I always kind of, well, I think in the early days, when I was working, you had to get it as near perfect when you were shooting, whereas later, it was, oh, don't worry, we'll fix it in post. And I think people became a little lax and lazy. I don't know if you have a reflection of it, because we can get rid of, which of course they could, but we were trained from the very beginning to make things, rushes were as perfect as it was ever going to get. And I loved that, because, and you watch rushes, you weren't thinking, oh, don't worry, they can digitally get rid of that or do this, which of course they can now and do. So I think it was, for me anyway, it's much more fun then to make things as perfect as you can, as opposed to say, oh, don't worry, some visual effect genius, which they are very often, can get me out of trouble here,
Yeah, I think there's a sort of a necessity of invention to perhaps perfect the shot and the scene. As you say, if it's all easy to fix, there may be a bit of laziness that pops into it. with now with the two cops following Otis, one of which is played by, I believe, Richard Donner's cousin, who always appeared in. He was the police captain in Lethal Weapon, and was in Timeline. And do you remember working with Richard Donner's cousin?
No, I don't know.
No,
I certainly didn't know any relations on the film. But all I remember, this scene really was Ned Beatty. I just loved that man. He was there's something about him, his walk.
Yeah.
And he just, you couldn't take your eyes off him. And of course, he was actually a really lovely person as well. I mean, a very sweet man.
Yeah.
With no pretension at all, you know.
Yeah, I think his performance is so well done, and he makes just walking a minute or a half scene walking somewhere interesting and funny and humorous and complex. Was it interesting filming in Grand Central Station? And because from a lighting point of view, it's an uncontrolled. Is it difficult?
No, it was. I think they only got permission a day or so before we actually needed to shoot, so it was difficult for Jeff Unsworth and the electrical team to get enough light to make it work. Because in those days, I mean, the film was not like now. The film was fairly slow, so you had to. But it worked well, and it was certainly a great production value. And as working on the platform in Grand Central, where we had all the trains and the platform, but that was great, and they're walking amongst the locomotives. It was watching. It's all coming back to me, and I start watching it. I must start watching it. So
no, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. So because I take it that it would have been done in a couple of days. You wouldn't have the luxury of being there for long shoots. It was quite quick and efficient.
Yeah.
Oh, as you mentioned Guy Hamilton earlier, did you ever work with Guy Hamilton or encounter him? No.
I mean, I never. Obviously, I know his work. I don't think he could have made the same film as Dick Donner did. I think Dick had that kind of American New York energy, and I think that came through. And also, it came through with the actors as well. It was, I think, an English director wouldn't have made it as well. In my opinion, would not have made it as well.
Yeah. I know that. Well, obviously, the relationship that Tom Mankiewicz had with Richard Donner was so integral. But of course, Guy Hamilton and Tom Mankiewicz had worked on 3 Bond films together. So it's strange how the people are 6 degrees of separation sort of thing that happened.
Yeah.
It was Steve Kahn who is Richard Donner's cousin. I can't remember who it was. I think what's nice but good about the death of Armus here is that it's all done in camera because the things are being projected. Did that make your job easier because you could see it rather than trying to imagine post?
Oh yes, it's always. I mean, you basically know if it's blue screen, roughly what's happening, but there's some sort of thing of the immediacy of seeing it through the camera as near as possible what the actual end result is going to be. It's much more exciting, and I mean it's something about I did a lot of blue screen, and you find it's very difficult to keep the crew as involved when everything's against a blue screen, and they have to imagine what eventually that blue screen is going to turn into. So it's and also the actors. I feel very sorry for actors sometimes. So when you tell that's happening there, over there, that crosses so and so. I mean, I know that's what they're paid for, but it's still. I think whatever things can be as real as possible, it helps everyone.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, we've got 2 wonderful actors here. Valerie Perrin and Gene Hackman as, again, a definitive Lex Luthor. Do you remember much about Valerie, working with Valerie?
Oh no, just she was lovely, crazy, but lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, I know she was superb, and in fact, she really was. I don't think she had to act. I think that was her. You know, what you saw was her, and yeah.
And she had wonderful costumes. Well, of course, this
Yes, great.
And
I seem to remember quite a nice figure, if I remember. But
yes, it's
and also you had Gene being very Gene Hackman, and Ned knocking over lamps and doing things. So, but almost never. It was always Ned, which was always like perfection. His timing was always perfect. You know. It wasn't. It looked very kind of haphazard, but he was. I just loved him. He was. And sometimes there was a lot of tension on the set, but when he came on the set, everything calmed down because he was very funny, very amusing, and everyone really loved him.
And the chemistry between the three is, of course, wonderful, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think, as you say, a lot of the big actors in this film signed on, apart from, say, the paychecks, because it was so different to what else they were doing. I mean, Gene Hackman, I believe Richard Donner saw him in The Scarecrow and had him in mind then to do this. So of course, you get to stretch their legs, don't they, as films like this. So was Gene, again, like Ned, very likable and fun?
Oh yes, very much so. In fact, I can't remember I can remember bad days sometimes with producers and production not allowing us to do what we needed to do. But I think all the actors knew they were doing something special, and also it was, I would say, beautifully photographed. The camera was always at the right place at the right time, you know, tracking wherever we needed to. We had all the floors, because no Steadicam then, so I had all the floors made so I could track anywhere with a dolly, as opposed to nowadays you have a Steadicam. Yeah, which was a bit of luck for me because I could never use a Steadicam. So it's fun to do. It's also fun when the actors get involved and understand how complicated some shots are. It's what I'm watching now in a planet. You know, it was a very complicated shot with everything going on, and they really made it work. Because some actors think, "Oh, sure, problem how to make it work," but I think a good actor also understands they got to help out sometimes with the move. You know,
I imagine things like getting Clark's coat caught in the door and stuff.
That was all right. Yeah, the toilet door.
Yeah. There's little things that, as an audience, you think, "Oh, that's probably good morning, if not longer." You get certain things like that, and again have that long tracking shot again with all the glass and things of that nature. When it came to takes, was Richard Donner one of those directors who liked a lot of coverage, liked a lot of options, or was he sort of more minimalist?
Oh no, I think Dick was very happy if he got it in one or two takes. He didn't. I mean, unlike some directors that everyone would say, "Print, let's move on." Dick was quite happy once we got a shot that worked. He wanted to move on and get the next shot.
I mean, because of the complexities of this film, I imagine that the pace was quite quick, because you had so much to do and release dates keep changing as well. Because originally it was going to be summer, wasn't it, 78, and then it was Christmas, and of course you couldn't dare go any later than that. So was there a certain point where panic kind of set in a little bit, that get it all sort of.
You felt there was always a pressure,
Mm.
but also you knew you couldn't work any quicker than we did. You know, it was a very, I mean, the crew with David Tomlin and Jeff Unsworth, you couldn't have a better crew
No.
you had. So there's no way you're going to work any faster and still get the quality that we knew the film deserved, you know.
Yeah.
And I must say, I think we're all very, when I meet people from the film that we worked together on, I think we're all very proud of what we made, you know.
Yeah. Because we are starting to get into the more action part of the film, and where you're starting to get stunt doubles and second unit involved. So you're obviously staying fundamentally with the principles, aren't you, at this point? And some of it being taken over. Yeah,
but we did. I must say, we did as much as we could ourselves. We didn't. I was always a great believer that the first should have everything going for them, and sometimes it's very, I think, very cruel. You walk away and say to the second unit, "Oh, you just carry on and finish the sequence now," and they don't have the facilities that we had as a first unit. So we'd always try and shoot quickly and as much as we could. So there was, and it wasn't an ego thing. It was just that that's the way I felt it should be. And I think Jeff felt the same. And Dick was what an indulgent, right? Dick was quick, and I think we had great special effects, visual effects. Everyone really was about as good as you can get at the time.
Yeah, because you had brilliant second unit directors. Of course, you had John Glenn, who went on to do 5 Bond films. You had John Barry, who was doing some second unit as well. So that standard, of course, would help considerably. Did you remember much about John Glenn? Still around, of course. Did you remember John Glenn on second unit and John Glenn and
no? John Barry? I think his first arrived when we were in Canada, and when we left Canada, we left a few sequences. And he shot them, so we never really crossed paths, no, to be quite honest. No.
And of course, it must have been quite nice shooting New York at night. But of course, there was a problem, as Madeline was eager to remind us, the famous blackout.
Yeah. No, that was, well, the timing was perfect.
Yeah,
we were on the hill looking down towards New York, and Jeff wanted one more light, and Dick Quinn and the American gaff said, "We have everything on the Jenny." He said, "Just me," and he undid the bottom of the lampstand in the street and plugged in at the last light, and it was perfect time. And as he plugged it in about 10 seconds, looking down the hill, all the lights in New York started going off. One by one, whole streets were gone. And for a few seconds or minutes, we thought, this is us. We fucked the whole of New York up. Of course, it had nothing to do with us. It was the power station on the island that had gone wrong. And that night, it was quite interesting. To get back to the hotel, no one could shoot. There were people on the streets guiding traffic. It was very much New Yorkers coming into their own. People realised the problem, and the police couldn't really cope with everything. So people were guiding traffic through dark streets, and we got back to the hotel in Central Park, and as we walked into the hotel, all black, and you hear screaming, and people were trapped in lifts, because obviously they've been in the lift then for an hour and a half. The power was cut off. Obviously we didn't even think about trying to. We climbed the stairs and went to bed and woke up in the morning and realized how serious it had been.
Yeah, I suppose for a moment you could see the headlines: "Superman shuts down New York" or something like.
Oh yeah, I think they'd have loved to blame it on something. I don't think they actually could.
Yeah. In a way, it would have been quite good publicity, wouldn't it? I suppose.
Yes, I think.
Yeah. So when it came to so after the film had wrapped, Christopher Reeve and some others, I imagine Margot as well, stayed on, I think, for them essentially a year doing the flying shots and other aspects of the technical side of it.
Yeah.
Again, were you in the thick of that as well?
I did towards the end. Yes, I did. I thought the whole film was finished, and then I got a call probably 9 months after I thought the film was finished, and went to Pinewood and was confronted by sequences to do, because by then Jeff had died, and so I was there to kind of photograph and semi-direct these sequences of flying, and I just couldn't believe all these months and months later there was still stuff to do. It's I never quite, to this day, understood how that happened, to be quite honest. It's because we covered, I mean, everything we shot, we covered it totally. We did all the cutaways, so you make the scene cut together whatever way you wanted to. So but I mean, I say I don't really quite understand what happened, but it did happen, and it was many, many months later that I guess it was like, instead of letting Dick Donner just make the film he wanted, I think there's probably a lot of interference from producers. Once you lose that one man's vision, it becomes very difficult sometimes.
So it wasn't just a case with the producers of, because from their point of view, they had a massive film to make. People were inventing new technology, new techniques, of course, which of course was very time consuming and obviously very expensive. So of course they had probably a nightmare all the time trying to just sort of keep it all going. But from what you've already alluded to is that not only were they worried and perhaps hard on Dick Donner because he was going over budget and the long shoots, etc., but also they weren't perhaps happy with the tone of the film and that.
No, I think they were probably more ashamed of the fact that had they listened at the beginning, and spent some more money and time on testing, we wouldn't have been testing flying rigs with a whole crew there. We'd have been doing it with a quarter size of the crew, get it to perfection, and then shoot when knowing how you're going to shoot it. So no, I think there were a lot of mistakes made, and probably, in my opinion, anyway, maybe too much blame aimed at Dick Donner. Because Dick is not a slow director in any respect. Dick is quick. Dick is New York. Click, 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 go, go, go. And he wasn't like, say, I mean, Richard Lester is much slower, in my opinion, than Dick Donner. But Dick knew this genre better than anyone. He knew New York. He knew the humor, and I've said it many times now. I can't think of anyone that could have done it better than he did. And also with maybe less support than he should have had.
Oh yeah. And you say he was an efficient, quick director because he had come through from TV, a very quick, medium. So but yes, of course, when you're inventing things and you're trying to work out new ways of reinventing the wheel, if you like, of course, you can't just nip along. And I think Richard Lester, when he finished 2 and then did 3, had a much easier job because he was just, you guys had done the foundations, all technology was there.
We worked out all the most of the problems.
You had
which Dick Lester wouldn't have done. I mean, no. Would have done much. Dick would have cut a scene rather than do a scene that's difficult. Whereas we all felt, like Dick Donner, that if this scene needs that, we're going to make it work.
Yeah.
I always thought, and I liked Dick Lesson, but he would have always done it the easy way, as opposed to the way that the film deserved.
Yeah, yeah. The Air Force One scene we're looking at now is infamous in a way because a member of the stunt team, unfortunately, was killed when one of the wings fell a bit of a height and then landed on one of the stunt people. I think it was a guy called Terry Hill, and I think he was only 29.
Yeah,
he was killed sadly, and I think there's also an electrician, somebody who got electrocuted as well on the film, and so the film is dedicated to obviously Jeffrey and also to others as well. Were you aware at the time of these incidents? And
we were. That was all second unit, that scene.
Yeah.
And I wasn't aware. In fact, I wasn't aware about any death until you just mentioned it.
Right.
So whether it was all kept quiet at the time, I don't know. But it's I certainly wasn't aware of it.
I mean, whether there's a sense to sort of the show must go on, and therefore there's a desire to not.
No, I mean, I never. I've always been totally the opposite. To me, we're making a film. We're not. I've done a lot of war films. We're not there to kill people.
No.
The film, you know, we're not using live ammunition, live explosions. It's you make it your pay to make it look real without the danger. And so I wasn't aware of that, and I'm quite perturbed that happened, I must say.
I don't think it was a case of any negligence or any corners cut. I think it was just the case of things happen sadly on, I just the nature, I suppose, of life. Going back to the Fortress of Solitude again, I mean, that must have been one of the very iconic sets to when you first saw some of these gigantic sets, the Fortress, the Grand Central Station.
Yeah.
Did you get quite excited when you saw John Barry stuff come to life?
Oh yes, it was I think you do with John Barry and Jeff Hunter that whatever we shot was going to be really different, terrific, and they're both very quiet, they both were very quiet men. They weren't kind of big ego guys. They were very quiet. They just got on with their life. I can't remember. There was because John came on quite late onto the film, because I think it was an Italian production team before him, art director. But so I think John had only been on the film for a few weeks when we started testing. And luckily I did 2 or 3 films with John after that, and had huge admiration for this very quiet Englishman that but had just amazing ideas, and the courage to carry them off,
Because am I right that John would have done storyboards and things that would have been a guidance for you? Was that more other members of the art department? And how much would that kind of artwork influence your designs of shots and things of that nature?
Well, storyboards are quite useful as kind of very basic way of shooting. But storyboards are often done by someone sitting in an office, not really involved too much in the film. So they're useful, but when you're actually on the set, you see different angles that the art director or the storyboard artist hadn't seen. So it's a mixture of the two. You have this kind of helpful storytelling storyboard, and then you have what's in front of you, and if you're sensible, you mix the two together.
And how much of yourself can you bring to your role as a camera operator? How much is Jeffrey designing it? How much are you doing it? And how much is obviously a collaboration, but what's the sort of relationship like?
Well, I was very lucky working with Jeff Unsworth, who totally trusted me and gave me leeway basically to do what I thought was best, which not a lot of cinematographers, especially in those days, did, or probably now. So Jeff and I had a really good relationship, and it allowed him more time to think about how he's going to photograph the scene, what I kept the time to think about how we're going to shoot the scene, and how to make it as interesting as possible, And then when you're working with someone like Dick Donner, who is very open to ideas, and he'd make fun of you when you say, "Oh, Dick, what about doing this?" And stuff like that. "Oh God, you're off again. You're fucking driving me crazy." What you find? And he'd say, in Russia, he said, "I didn't want to do this shot, but stop Peter sulking, I did." So he would play this game, but he would support you totally. In if you had an idea, if it worked, it worked, and if it didn't, you try it and you think that obviously I thought it would work, it doesn't work, and move on. So it was. I can't imagine a better way of working than we did when we worked together.
Oh yeah, having that long relationship and that mutual trust, of course, and so you were able to design the movements, the pans, the angles. Is that something you would experience on other films, or would your role as a camera operator be a bit more restricted on certain projects?
I think with Dick it was probably one of the best experiences of my life, because Dick had no ego. If you had an idea, not only would he say, "Okay," he would tell everyone. He'd make fun of you. So, "This is the kid's idea," but you do it, I'd do it with total enthusiasm from him, You don't get that very often, and I found that I look back at that period with Dick, with David Tomlin as the AD, Jeff as the DP. John Barry. You couldn't have had a better team around you.
As said, everybody was at the top of their game. And of course, John Barry sadly passed away not soon after, not too long after this.
That was very sad because he wanted really to direct, and he wanted Jeff to photograph it, me to operate, but we weren't available. And I think it didn't work out through many reasons. And I don't know, I think whether that destroyed John, I don't know, but I thought it was very sad because he was such a creative, marvelous man. And it was it just seemed not the way it should be, because I don't think he got. It's only when you direct, as I found out later, you realize how much you need support. You might be full of ego. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. But you really do need, that's why even the very top directors, Spielberg, you look at their credits, they have the same people with them film after film after film, because that gives them the confidence that they need to do what they want to do, And usually then you have a person, a DP or an AD or whatever, who could whisper in your ear, maybe it's not the way to do it if we did this or did that, we can't afford to do this. And you listen if you trust people, which I've always found that I personally did,
I heard that Margot Kidder was quite a clumsy but person in real life, quite clumsy, her character. Would you agree that Margot was a bit on the clumsy side? Did it
a bit on the what side?
A bit on the clumsy side. So
I thought she's blind. Without the glasses, she was blind.
Ah, right.
So she bumped into things,
Ah,
but she was lovely.
mm,
And I can't imagine anyone better for the part.
Yeah.
But once you took her glasses off,
mm,
because they were really quite thick, the normal glasses, she
Mm.
really was. She'd bump into tables, knock over things, and Dick would give her quite a hard time about it. But
mm,
she wasn't playing a game. She really was.
mm,
And I met her a few times, or a couple of times later, many years later. And I
mm.
must say, she was a most delightful person.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what makes her version of Lois Lane so great is that you clearly show how much in love she is with Superman. She plays
Yeah.
the
Oh no,
goofy, yeah,
oh she's a. Oh no, she's a. I think a very. I mean, I think a superb actress. You know, and look at the scene now when she look at Superman and realise that maybe he can see through her dress. You know, it's a lovely, lovely. Because a lot of actors would have overdone that. You know, and I think she just got it right. You know.
Mm. Yeah, it's very much a couple of young people on their first date, sort of awkwardness and excitement with it, and I think what makes Christopher Reeve so fantastic is his performance as Clark Kent. No other actor, I don't think, has got Clark Kent quite as right as Christopher Reeve did, making him very shy and comfortable. And there's this, we'll come to it after the flying scene, but there's a scene where he thinks he'll tell Lois, he takes his glasses off and he goes back and he gains like a foot and a half, you know, and a lot of it is posture with his performance.
No, I think I remember when we were doing, because we tested quite a few people, and when we tested Chris, yeah, obviously needed a lot of body building later because he really wasn't that big.
Yeah.
But Clark, you felt he was perfect for Clark Kent. And you knew, I mean, he had a great look with a little quiff of hair and that. And they, once they built him up physically, he was, and he really worked on the fly. And he really got it to perfection, much more than I might pick any of the stunt people. You know, he really got the flying worked out very well indeed. And he, I mean, and quite obviously should have been very serious, but he knew that if the film worked out, he was made for life. If it didn't work out, he would just disappear, you know. And and it's very difficult walking around in a kind of that outfit with a red nappy and but I thought no, I say he was a charming man and greatly missed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I recall Richard Donner saying in an interview that this takeoff sequence was really difficult to film when they embrace and they go off. You know, it must have been. Everyone must have had a lot of patience with all the setups and back to starting position, all that sort of thing. But as it went on, it flowed as you
went. No, I'd say his body control was much better than anyone else, any stunt guy. You know, he really made it work. And I mean, now when he takes off here, you know, it's very. I mean, it's beautifully done when he flies with her. You know, in fact, it's a very romantic sequence when they're flying together.
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite sequences. And looking at the sequels again, Superman 4 has a lovely homage to this when they have another. It's basically stolen from this film, but basically it's a lovely moments in that film that they've copied. And I think what was good about this film is that it has a good pace to it. It's not too slow. It's not too quick. It allows the scenes to breathe and have the romance of it. I recently went to Pinewood Studios a few years ago, and they were talking about that Statue of Liberty prop that we're seeing in the background now.
Yeah.
And that back then there wasn't this obsession with film memorabilia and props and all this
Yep.
sort of thing. And that Statue of Liberty miniature was just discarded in the Pinewood Gardens just for
Yep.
years, gathering moss and all that sort of thing. I mean, you can only imagine how much it would be worth.
Yes.
these days. So,
Oh yeah, no, it's terrible.
yeah.
What, you know, I remember working on films in marvelous sets,
Mm,
and you're walking past the stage a few days later, and you walk on,
mm,
and it's been demolished. So, I mean, like on Beckett, when with Canterbury Cathedral, you know, which is one of the best films I ever worked on,
mm.
and the set was so wonderful. And then go back a couple of days later, and you see, you know, 30 stagehands smashing the thing. I know they have to.
Mm.
And then this basic work of art has just disappeared into, you know, a bunch of rubble, you know.
Mm. Yeah, it must be difficult, especially with production designers.
Oh, it must be hate for them. It must be.
Yeah, but I suppose it's the excitement of your next thing you're going to build. It's
Yeah.
that is what
Yeah,
sort of
takes over probably. Yeah.
takes you over. I mean, what was a lot of the things we're seeing now are obviously very controlled, staged stage work, but of course you were seeing earlier flying on the streets of New York on wires. Was that a bit hair raising to just to see the movie stars up in the air on these quite thin wires? Was that of concern?
Yeah, it was quite. I think about those wires. They obviously they were, you know, they were made to take the weight they needed to, but if ever they had got damaged, that strength disappeared, you know. And I remember one of the first times I had my own flying rig, where, you know, I could fly with a camera alongside them. And we ended up, someone screwed up, and we ended up twirling around each other. And I remember the stunt guy before that said, you know, if there was a big strain on the wire, it could break at any time. I remember ended up looking into the face of this fairly ugly stunt guy. And I thought, it's just the last fucking face I'm going to see before this wire breaks. And I end up in these, because it was in Krypton, so I had all these spiky green plastic things below me. I thought, not the way I want to end my career, but it all worked out okay.
Yeah. Do you remember Colin Chilvers, who was on the special effects? Colin Chilvers.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
Because I think he did a lot of the Krypton crystal.
Yeah.
And floors and that sort of thing. So, I was going to ask about. You said about the wires being very thin. When we looked at the bank robber sequence with the bank robber falls and Superman flies to catch him on the outside of the building.
Yeah.
Paul Weston, quite a famous stunt coordinator, was doubling for Christopher Reeve, and his wire broke.
Yeah.
And he fell about sort of 15 feet, broke his collarbone. So it's obviously was a quite precarious thing to be involved with. And I mean, would you have shot this sequence here with the going for the clouds and the smoke and everything?
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful sequence. The two of them together, also very romantic.
Yeah, I think that the song has divided people a little bit. The "Can You Read My Mind"? Some people love it, some people don't. But I think works quite well. And this is again a great shot with when they say goodbye, and it's a rear projection recorded.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we did that. That was quite difficult timing.
Yeah,
but it's all in one shot. It's the one that's on now. Yes.
Yeah, and it's only through study you can sort of almost see the joins, but it is very, very well done.
You're not supposed to.
No. But again, you can't really, you know, I suppose in telltale signs there's a slight reduction in quality as you get the process shot, but apart from that, and the way you're focusing on Margot distracts from that. But,
I just watch it now. Yes. I'll say she was lovely. She was.
Yeah.
It's perfect timing to go through the door, and there he is.
Yeah, yeah. And it might be, sorry, Peter.
That's great. That's a very good,
Yeah,
very good sequence.
yeah. And this is a bit in a second where he grows another foot in a minute.
Yeah.
I think that's always, if you had to say what the genius of his performance is, this moment I think is it stems from this really. But I mean, did you delight with coming up with different ways of shooting and like that shot we just saw? The audience, a lot of the audience would have gone, "Oh, how do you do that?" It must have been quite gratifying to sort of come up with these things. You think they're not going to see that; they're not going to know how you.
No, it's I think it's that's one of the kind of the proudest shots of the film, for I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, of course, there's so many making of documentaries, and there was one to tie in with Superman on TV in '78. As a filmmaker, do you like the audience to know about the process, or do you think it should be a bit of mystery?
If I'm being honest, which sometimes I am, I think it's best as I still prefer it like there's a magic to it, and you don't explain everything to the audience. Because we all, as a kid, much more than now, you lived in a movie theatre when I was a youngster, and you didn't really want to be told, "Oh, by the way, that wasn't the way. That's not real." That's because you came out from the cinema believing what you've seen, and most of it was atrocious, to be quite honest. But at the time, when you're 11, 12, 13 in those days, it was you just experienced a magic experience,
Yeah. I was part of my research. Tom Mankiewicz was describing your role as camera operator, and he seemed to believe that was a distinct difference between a camera operator in the UK and one in the States. Is that true?
Totally true. Yes, because it luckily, from my point of view, in England, the operator works very closely with the director. In America, the cinematographer, director of photography, really works with the director, and the operator then is told, "You can come on now, and you do this or do that." Whereas I've been very, very lucky, and it's always been appreciated. I know when we did Cabaret with Bob Fosse, I think he'd only made one film before that, as a director, and we started rehearsing, and I'm suggesting doing this and doing that, and he kind of, "Who the fuck is that talking?" He didn't know who I was, basically. But he was expecting only Jeffrey Unsworth, the DP, was going to have opinions, and it worked. It worked out incredibly well, because and I remember Bobby saying, "This is fucking great." He said, "Instead of a pair of eyes, I get two pair of eyes for the same money." So he loved it. Other directors I worked with, it took a bit longer for them to trust you, but people like Bobby and Donna, they just loved that way of working.
Yeah. There wasn't one of the other cameramen on the film, a gentleman called Dennis Coop. Do you remember Dennis Coop at all?
Yeah, Dennis was in charge of the flying unit, so they did a lot of the front projection, back projection, all that type of stuff, and Dennis was perfect for that, not the, I can say it now because he's no longer with us, not the most creative cameraman in the world, but technically very, very good. And he had with him Paul Wilson and the whole crew that technically could do things that took a lot of patience to get right. I don't think would ever come up with something that's totally original, but for what they were employed for, they were perfect.
And of course, we're now back to, believe back to Canada again for the missile convoy sort of sequence. So we're ramping into the third act of the film.
Yeah.
I mean, what, did you like working on location?
I
do you-
loved it. Yeah. Also, I loved it because I had to. Dick hated helicopters, so I did all the helicopter work. Dick wouldn't go near a helicopter, so I could do a lot of this sequence. I shot with a helicopter, and the stunt we're just seeing now when the car goes over about 5 or 6 times. You can see the jack underneath it, unfortunately, but it was supposed to like go twice, and it went about 5 times. And I think that's the first time that type of stunt had been done, when the driver presses a button, and it's like almost like an anchor drops down through the bottom of the car.
Yeah,
and it takes. I mean, it takes a lot of courage for the stunt guy to do it. But
oh yeah. I also have great admiration for stunt.
without, I mean, yes, I mean, they have a lot of ego, some of them, but in a way you need that, because you're risking. It's not like a science, there's no book written about how to do this type of shot. You do it, and you always do it to as much as you can, as safely as you can. There's always something that can go wrong, because if a car's twisting 3 or 4 times in the air, you don't know where it's going to land on its front, its boots, the tires are going to. You have no idea really what's going to happen.
Yeah,
so it takes a lot of courage.
Oh yeah. I mean, we have a lovely cameo from Larry Hangman in this. Obviously, before his Dynasty days. Did you remember Larry's cameo?
Oh yes, of course, yes. It was he's very good.
Yeah.
Or he made sure you did as well, because he was he wasn't a shy person.
Like the attention, yeah.
Yeah, no, he did, and it was.
I mean, do you find that a lot of actors are? Well, there's must be a part of you that likes the attention to go into acting, but do you find a lot of actors are also surprisingly quite quiet and shy, and they're all right with a script, but without it, they're a bit sort of more, like we are.
Yeah, I think. Yes, I think. Like the rest of us, you have some that are full of ego, some that are very shy, some that are totally introverted, some that are so full of shit you can't believe it. And I think that that's what makes it so exciting, And yeah. I have huge admiration, for anyone who can get in front of the camera and basically expose himself, and it's. I mean, I've never done any acting, never would. But when you've been in front of camera explaining things, in a documentary, you panic, because suddenly this lens is looking at you, which means the whole world are looking at you. If we're going to watch this, and you're explaining things. Oh
yeah, it makes you very vulnerable, doesn't it?
It makes you totally vulnerable. And no, I say I've learned over the years huge respect, for actors, and I think it's especially actresses as well, because I can't remember any actress I ever worked with that did any moaning or groan. They just get on with it, and some had very tough sequences to do, With lots of the men, a lot of ego, but you work with like Ingrid Bergman, those type of actresses, so they're there to give the performance and get on with it, and they do that,
When it came to Jeffrey's lighting and your camera work, would you light men and women differently? Was there conscious?
Jeffrey loved making women look beautiful. I mean, he delighted, and sometimes that backfired, because of some films when the woman wasn't supposed to look that kind of good, and Jeff had very great difficulty in not making them always look the very best they could. No, he just loved photographing. He loved photographing, but he really enjoyed photographing women and did it extremely well, you know.
Hmm.
And it also gave them, and they I remember Lauren Bacall, you know, she worked with Jeff a couple of, and she said, hey, Jeff, make sure I look fucking beautiful, you know, and she wasn't, I'm getting on now, but make sure I look fucking beautiful. And, and it was very hard to make it that beautiful at that time of her life, but Jeff would do his very best.
Yeah. I would go call Margaret Kidder saying that she loved Jeffrey Unsworth, and he would sort of say, "Quiet, I'm lighting the lady," and it seemed to be a very nice sort of relationship that he had with Margot. Yeah. Just touching on the Canadian shoot. Well, am I right that there was some bad weather on the Canadian shoot a little bit, and it extended?
I don't remember too much about the weather. It was I think there was, because we're near the Rockies, so that you had kind of stormy times. But my main memory was like in the wheat field and the great expanse, you know, the landscape went on forever, you know, and I think it was a perfect location that they found early on. And then I think Jeff and Dick had gone out there like 6 or 9 months earlier, and they then the art department, they planted all the fields, so you had this endless horizon of wheat, I guess it was, you know? And it looked perfect, you know, and the crane shot was one of my favorite shots, really, is they had a crane shot when she stands alone in the field, and you track through the wheat and go over her head into the sky, and then the film basically starts, you know.
Yeah. I don't know if you the Superman DVD that I gave you had the extended version of the film, a TV edit that was never meant to be really. It wasn't something that Richard Donner approved, but it was because of advertising profitable to make an extended version of the film, and it's about half an hour longer than the version we're seeing. Did you watch the?
I haven't seen it yet. No, we have it here. We've been a bit kind of traveling around and busy, but I will watch it, because it always you forget sometimes when you work on a film how much is never seen, you know.
Yeah,
it's always nice to see the director's cut or the longer version.
It's quite an interesting version. Well, I think one of the interesting things is that it shows just how good Stewart's editing is, because you get to see a bit more of his process and how he cut it and how he got the best out of it and changed the scene a little bit and the pace. So it's quite interesting from Stewart's point of view.
Yeah. No, Stuart's, a superb editor and later director, but I must say I have a great admiration for him. Sometimes a little bit full of shit sometimes, but a very nice man. And no, he's no, I will watch that, because I say I have a great admiration for him.
Oh yeah, and I believe that his relationship with Richard Donner was a fantastic one, because they did so many films together, but also it was quite fiery, and it was, you know, they sometimes would get on each other's nerves, but it was always in a good way, you know. So it was quite, So do you have a favorite set that you worked on the film? Because there's so many outstanding sets, you know. Was there one you thought, oh well, this is, you know, I'm looking forward to being here and shooting the subway, you know, the Grand Central set or whatever it might be?
I think probably on Beckett, when they built Canterbury Cathedral on the big stage at Shepperton. I was a camera assistant, and I wasn't involved like creatively. But I remember walking onto that set and thinking how real this felt. You know, John Bryant, who was the producer and also the production designer, which is not a bad situation to be in, and Jeff photographed it, and we shot a big sequence with Peter O'Toole coming in and pan round, and it had the whole set there, but a false roof on top, so the camera's on a nodal point, so the false roof fits totally onto the actual set. So really, I mean, really difficult to do, and it looked unbelievable. We went to Russia the following day, and I used to go early sometimes to just before everyone else, so I could see for Jeff if any problems. And I came back, I said, it's fucking unbelievable. And then we all go at lunchtime with the sound, all the rest of it. But by then, what was it, Irvin Allen, I think was the producer, he went crazy. He said, I paid $50,000 to this fucking set. And I told him, see it. And of course, $50,000 then was a huge amount of money. And of course, it was perfect. Exactly, you just saw into the shadows of it. And he made Jeff reshoot it with more light. And I thought it must be destroying for the cameraman, because you can't say, well, you can say, no, I'm leaving the film, or you have to do it. And Jeffrey, I mean, he didn't put a lot more light on, but put a bit more light into the interior of the set to make the producer happy for his 50,000. I mean, it still looked great, but the original looked so. You actually felt you were in. I mean, I'm sure you've been in like a big cathedral, and it has a very strange feeling when you walk in there. And this set had exactly that feeling. And I thought Jeff and John Bryant, the production designer, got it exactly right. Unfortunately, Irvin Allen didn't look along those lines. And as he made 2 Elvis Presley films before that, made a fortune from working with Elvis Presley or people like that, you couldn't argue. He was a rich man. He'd been successful without any taste at all.
It's often the way, unfortunately. I mean, how much involvement did Warner Bros. Have as far as you were concerned? Were they very much get on with it? They weren't, because fundamentally it was their property that the Soul Kinds were playing with.
I think my memory, and also later, when I started moving up the grades and ended up directing, Warner's were one of the easiest companies to work for. I think their philosophy was, we take forever, we find the right director, and that's it. We made our choice that he's a director, and or she, and that's the film we're going to back. So I thought Warner's were very, very good in that respect. I mean, when you're investing many millions into a film, it takes a lot of courage to be that way.
Oh yeah, and I think obviously this is a very pioneering film, because this is the first of the comic book films, and to give Ida Soulkind all the credit that he deserves, that he was kind of the father of the modern superhero franchises that we have today. And but of course Warner Bros. Wasn't directly involved. It was a negative pickup deal that they had, so the money would come in later in the day. But of course, the more they saw the film, the more they wanted to buy in, and I think they took more of an interest as it went along, and the Soul Kinds needed their financial support along the line. And of course, they had say over who was Superman and things of that nature, but they were never breathing over Dick Donner's shoulders or anything like that. So of course, that was the nice freedom about it, I guess. Big, because you've worked on big superhero films, Batman and Robin. Is there more? A lot. I imagine there's so much more oversight that Warner Bros. Had an interest in what you were doing on those, whereas this one, it was kind of, they were so far away.
I didn't quite understand the question.
I was saying that Warner Bros. Had very little day-to-day interaction with this film.
Oh, very little.
But later, you probably saw with Batman that more.
No, I think the good thing about Warner's, which I didn't find so much with later with Columbia or MGM, they trusted the director to make the film that he felt was the very best he could do, or she could do. And they really didn't interfere that much, or not outwardly anyway.
We've got sequences now at the Hoover Dam. Do you remember going to shoot this?
Say that again,
the Hoover Dam sequence is on.
Oh yeah.
And was it nice to go to locations like the Hoover Dam?
Yes, yeah. I mean, anything that has that reality to it, which you could never. I mean, you could do it visual effect wise, but you could never even think about building that. So it's and I think that's something that with John Barry and the production team on that, they really spent money where it was necessary to give the film that the bigness that it needed.
Yeah. One producer we haven't mentioned is Charles Greenlaw. Do you recall him at all? I think he might be a bit more in the background, from what I understand.
Was he? Is he credited as?
He is. Yeah, he's on the credits at the beginning. And also Richard Lester is an uncredited but producer. How quickly was Richard Lester turning up? When did he kind of start to sort of get on the scene?
Well, he was brought in, I think, to kind of maybe to scare Richard, because Richard called Jeff and I and Dave Tomlin into his office and said, they're bringing Richard Lester in. And I'd worked with Richard, and I said, well, I think one thing to be certain of, Richard won't want to take over the film at the moment because it's too difficult, too complicated.
Yeah.
And which was true. And Dick came on board. The Soulkinds owed him $1 million from when he did the Musketeers film. They made 3 Musketeers, they made 2 films. But they cheated him. They didn't pay for the second one. So I think he came on, and the first day he was there, he got the check for $1 million. So that's why he was there, really. He certainly didn't interfere, as far as I could see, too much. And we just carried on making the film that we were making. Then, of course, later when they got rid of Dick, then Richard took over and made his kind of very typical film when just make it as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it works or doesn't work, Whereas we were determined to make a film that worked. Lester didn't really have that anything about perfection in him.
Yeah. And you didn't return, did you, when Richard Lester took over Superman 2? Am I correct in saying that? You weren't on Superman 2 Lester's stuff?
No, I didn't do any.
You didn't get that right. You didn't tell him right that you made
my ex-wife.
Superman 1 and 2. You didn't get that right.
Yes, we didn't make.
He's asking you a question about were you there at Superman 2?
Okay, I have this all the time, don't I?
Okay.
When Dick Lester came on, then I wasn't involved anymore.
Yeah.
Up till then, we'd made the whole thing. We were making 2 films in tandem.
Yeah.
And then they panicked about financially, though we finished number 1.
Yeah. And
then Dick Lester was then going to come in with his own team to make number 2 and number 3, I guess. But by then, I must say, I had no intention of doing anything that Dick Donald wasn't involved in, because to me, it was his strength and his understanding that made the film work.
I think so many people felt the same as you did. Obviously, Tom Stewart, John Richardson, the special effects, they all felt they were part of Donna's people, as it were, and they stood their ground. So that's very admirable, really. I mean, what was it difficult shooting 2 films simultaneously in respect of keeping track of it, or was that more of
No, because we had, I mean, a really high class crew. I mean, John Barrios, production designer, Jeff, and so it was well worked out, and if you had a set that needed scenes for both films, you did it. It made total sense to do it. Why would you come back 3 months later at a set that I have to keep on the stage, pay for the stage? So it was a very sensible decision. And then that all kind of disappeared a little bit, and then I think probably got very much out of control.
They didn't like the producers didn't like when you told them that you had shot more of Superman 2 than Superman 1. They didn't like that.
Can you hear what Madeline said?
I did indeed, yes.
No, when they said, we're now going to finish number 1 and forget number 2, and I said, well, you do realise that we've shot more of number 2 than number 1.
Yeah.
But I wish they hadn't realised, which is really, I mean, I don't know what else you think. So what the producers, it's not that difficult really, being a producer. And the shooting crew knew that we shot more too, but they didn't seem to know that. And it was a screw up, and a very sad one in a way, in the fact that I think they were determined to blame Dick Donner whenever they could, which was, I think, was very wrong.
Oh, absolutely. And it is a very good point that an awful lot, when you watch the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, one of the things you do realise is that, yes, a lot of the scenes were shot very early in the production for 2, and you can particularly tell that because of Christopher Reeve's build, particularly in the forest scenes. And, so I imagine had Dick Donner stayed on, he would have reshot a lot of what you did for 2.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, because whereas I say with Dick Lester, I keep saying the same, I like him, but he just wants to shoot. He's not really that interested in whether it works or not, as far as I'm concerned. So, and just get it done, and we'll make it work later, and it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. And I think Richard Donner would have probably got Marlon Brando back to, because the problem with doing 2 first, or a lot of it early on, is that you later on, when you're doing all stuff for 1, you're working out better ways perhaps of doing what you did earlier.
Yeah.
For a lot of Superman 2, including perhaps Brando stuff, they would have, whether the Soul Kinds would have paid Marlon Brando again, I doubt it, but
no, they wouldn't.
I imagine maybe Richard Donner would have walked away at that point had they said not getting Marlon Brando back. So I think there was always going to be a trouble with 2 had he done it or not, really. But but did you get the sense that once you had the premiere and everyone was enjoying the success, that perhaps some of those divisions were healing a little bit, and you were optimistic for 2 at the beginning of coming and finishing it?
No, I never really went back after I left. I started other films, and I only went back for it was actually a year after I'd left the first one.
Tell them about the card credit. That's bribery.
Sorry?
That's called a chantage in French.
That
they called you up to quit another film, and they would give you a full card credit because you really were the only operator. Only if you'd quit the film and come to them.
Which I didn't do.
Right, but you should say that, because they were totally dishonest people, because I worked with them too. Totally. The producers were horrible. I worked as a camera assistant. Our checks were bouncing. They were from a Rome bank. They didn't pay us. And I went off to do another film. You don't want me interjecting, but the most important thing Peter said about Warner Brothers, and it's really important if filmmakers are watching, there was Terry Semel and Bob Daly. And and Peter gets invited to Barbara Streisand's house, and I sat next to Terry Semel, and I asked him about Stanley Kubrick, and they let Stanley Kubrick give them like a 1-page outline or give them the script for 4 hours, and he gave them 4 hours to make the decision, and on the basis of that, they left Stanley Kubrick alone. And that's why Stanley Kubrick was a great filmmaker, because they had total support of Terry Semel and Bob Derry.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think as a producer, you've got to trust the people that, and you know that yourself, don't you, Peter? Because you've been a producer yourself, and you know that unless you trust the creative people, it's not going to work at all, is it? So that's a very good point. But so they really wanted you back. It sounds like, and
yes, I felt by then that I really didn't want to. I didn't like the people that had taken over.
Yeah.
In any way, I didn't think they were in any way creative or caring, and I knew it would be a very upsetting experience for me. So I didn't really. Although the offers were quite good, I thought, well, life is too short, and I think I made the right decision. Anyway, it's too late now.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. And it's very evident when we were watching it at the Albert Hall, and I was thinking, wow, this is such a great film. And then you look at 2 and 3 and 4, and you think they're just not anywhere near that level of. They've all got their good qualities, but when you,
I didn't have that scale or intensity.
No.
And I told you. I mean, think about Dick Lester. I mean, Dick, if he could shoot 6 hours a day instead of 10 hours, he would. He just wanted to get his work done, move on. Work done, move on. It didn't work. Oh, well, don't worry. That didn't work, but we'll make it work. And whereas we had the opposite attitude.
Yeah.
That you wanted everything to work in camera, and be very proud of what you've done. Which I think with Jeff Unsworth and Dick Donner, David Tomlin, and the crew we had. I mean, we did majority of the time it worked that way, and it worked very well.
Yeah. I mean, do you think the best producers are ones that perhaps started like yourself, actually more involved in the making process? You have that creative mind, but also got to have the bottom line, and that mix is perhaps what Old didn't have.
Yeah.
Tell them about Joe Levine.
Sorry?
Joe Levine was a fantastic producer.
No, I think the thing is that the main crew members on the first one, everyone really cared about what they were doing. Everyone wanted to be as perfect as possible, and what the director wanted. So we weren't willing to cut corners, and I think that shows. I mean, I think I haven't seen a film quite a time, but I think it's very few sequences that I'm not fairly proud of.
I mean, do you have a favorite scene, a favorite moment, or we mentioned obviously the sequences and the wheat fields, of course, but anything else that you're particularly proud of?
I remember in New York, we're in the theatre district in New York doing a flying sequence, and Chris was up there on a ledge of the theatre, and I'm up on the camera next to him on a camera crane. And there people coming out. We had to wait for them to leave the theatre down below. We weren't making a big fuss. We were very quiet. And it was I think it was an Ibsen. It was a very Chekhov or Ibsen. It's a kind of very highbrow play. And there's one or two other people looked up and they saw Superman. And they started talking like children. It's Superman. And you suddenly realize these people have just come out of Chekhov. They look at us, and he is Superman.
Yeah.
And I looked at Chris, and I said, because I knew Chris was very nervous about whether it's a big decision. I said, I think you know now you made the right decision. With that crowd down there, I looking at you and thinking, Superman, you know. And I think at that time, if I'd have said to him, go and jump off and show him how you fly, he probably would have done. He really should if he had done. But so I think that was a time when he realized that good or bad decision, it was a decision that well, it's a good decision for him.
Yeah. I think when you wearing that outfit and you know, you can't help but feeling probably quite invulnerable and absorbing a bit of the character. And I think there was something on too when they're on a flying rig with Margot, and I think he's worried that something of hers is breaking. He sort of tries to swoop in like Superman, and as you realise you actually can't fly, you know, sort of, that sort of thing. But was there anything on the film that was just, you know, you even have cold sweats now about, just something that just was just so difficult to do, or just wasn't going the way it should?
No, it really was. I think the most difficult thing was, and I think I said earlier, about the fact that the production wouldn't spend money early on to affect the flying. I've seen a mime thing from Madeline. Is this a new game? Sorry, what am I supposed to do? I wish I could have a camera.
You always complained about when it was hard for you to be operating on the wires, holding the camera on the wires.
That's because no matter we said how painful it was flying with a camera, because you had all the pressure around your private parts, but I won't go into that in too much detail.
So that's a good point. That with the flying shots, you obviously had to be moving with them until you were suspended. And
we had we had the all the kind of wires lined up together. So you and each person, like the four, were flying with all the heavies. They all had their own team pulling them, and I had my team around the back, you know, pulling me, so you could overtake or be level. But it was a little painful, to be quite honest. And the first time we shot, there was a big fuck up, and they stopped pulling, and then we all wound around each other very, very slowly. And I ended up looking at, what's his name, Jack O'Halloran, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought, it's the last face I'm going to see, because I thought the wire's going to break any minute now. And I look at this very ugly person, looking down below at Krypton, thinking that spike's going to go up my arse when I fall. And this is the end of my career. But luckily, we slowly unspun and carried on. But it was, I must say, I think the flying worked well, and especially with Chris, because he has such a command of his body that no one did it like him.
Oh no. And here, I think is this Gulf Mexico with the car sequence here? I think was that Mexico that they were shooting?
I think it was Arizona or
Arizona,
yes.
And this couldn't have been particularly pleasant for Margot Kidder to do, and I imagine that took a few days to do. But I'm guessing they were all real troopers with the stunts, and the actors quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, a good thing about Chris, I mean, physically he was fantastic, but also, I mean, he's a good actor, and I think we're amazingly lucky having someone like him, because we tested so many different people before we started shooting, and they were terrible. I mean, they looked good and one was the producer's wife's dentist.
Oh yes.
From LA, and they flew him over from Los Angeles because she'd had her teeth done, and she came round from whatever it was that she's on, kind of a bit woozy, looks up and saw this dentist and thought she was looking at Clark Kent. So then they flew him over to England, and we spent the whole day Saturday testing this dentist. It was probably a superb dentist, but fucking acting wasn't in his So I think when Chris came on with it, we knew that was the end of that. We found someone.
Do you remember Lynn Stormaster, the casting director?
Yeah, a little bit. Yes, not that much. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was wondering about Yvonne Blake, who was the costume designer, because
Yes, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Because I imagine, because I think she, as you say, about the fluorescent material for the Krypton, suits and everything. Of course, that must have been something, quite a thing for her to do.
I do terrible. I mean, the thing is, when we did the first test with Chris, and he's obviously very, very nervous. And when he put his arm up to fly, because it's a great big sweat, and the producers went crazy. So Superman can't sweat.
Yeah.
I mean, this outfit, you can imagine. And they got some sort of, I think, doctor or specialist in and said, what do we do about stopping the sweat? He said, I can stop that. He says, I can get rid of those sweat glands. And they said, oh, great, do that then. He said, no, you understand. If I get rid of them from here, the sweat's going to come out somewhere.
Yeah.
Out of his ear, out of his nose, out of his willy. So he said, the sweat is going to come out. It has to come out.
Yeah.
But I think at the time, Chris would have agreed to anything, Yeah. And luckily, the doctor had quite a good sense of humour, set up the producers nicely, saying, it won't microscopic come from under his arm, but it will come from somewhere else. So, and so I mean, they made the first costumes were terrible, and they made costumes were less didn't hold the heat as much, and you learned only to get Chris in that position just when you needed it. You didn't. You were very kind of thoughtful about not keeping him too hot too long.
So there's a lot of effort to sort of keep him cool, and that sort of side of it. Because I hear from a couple people who worked on the film, sometimes found Chris to be a bit distant, or not perhaps the great human being that we all know him to be. But of course, that's nerves, isn't it? And the fact he's got this huge film on his shoulders. And
no, I mean, this was the first really big thing. Well, obviously the film we'd ever done. It was going to work or not work through him, and would destroy his career if it didn't work. And maybe not help his career if it did work, because he's always going to be known as. It's very difficult. He did a few things after that, but he's always going to be Superman or Clark Kent.
Double-edged sword sometimes, isn't it?
And so I was very happy for him, because he was a very serious young man, and he really worked hard on.
Oh yeah, the
on, especially the Superman bit, because I think being a good actor, he could do Clark Kent with his eyes closed.
Yeah,
but I think sometimes he found it difficult to some of those lines, to say. But I thought I can't imagine anyone else did it better.
No,
and physically he was really. He had great control when he did the fly, and he looked so much better, as I said earlier, than any stuntman did. He looked really good.
Oh yeah. I just think of some of the other actors in the film as we come to the end of it. Mark McClure's Jimmy Olsen, and you've got Terence Stamp and Sarah Douglas. Any reflections on them at all?
No, I guess Neb. I love Neb Beatty. I like.
He sticks out. Yeah.
I mean, and Ned put a lightness into it that it needed. Gene tried to be humorous, but it's not really his game to be humorous.
Yeah.
Brando was, I mean, like for me, like an opportunity of a lifetime to work with someone like Marlon Brando. No, it was an experience. I mean, even all these years later, and you may be be thinking about some of this. It's an experience I would never forget, and I'm very happy and lucky that I was involved.
Because what sort of impact did this film have on your career? Did it specifically lead to certain things, or?
Yeah, well, I think people knew that if you could make it, with Jeffrey Arnsworth and all the crew we had, there's no film you couldn't. Doesn't matter how difficult a film was technically or action-wise, that you couldn't make it work. I didn't want to spend my life doing that type of film. I must admit, I did.
We just saw the lovely shot of Christopher going around the Earth and looking at the camera. But were you filming that?
No, that was the second unit. When he goes around the world.
Yeah.
But they had there was one crew that basically did nothing but flying. They had their own stage, their own setup, and they did a lot of the flying stuff.
Yeah. Did you ever encounter people like Roy Field and David Lane and
yes,
those people? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes, I knew them from well, basically forever. From other films. So.
Yeah. And again, were they very unassuming people? I guess, sort of very sort of dedicated technicians. And...
Yeah, I think they were most of that team, like Roy, and that they they basically did what they were asked to do. They weren't necessarily, which is probably a good thing, that creative on their own. They did what was necessary and what was asked for.
Yeah.
And because otherwise you have too many people with too many ideas,
Did you count as Zoran Persic, who did the Zoptics, who came up with the revolutionary way of shooting it?
Yeah, I met him, but he basically worked with Dennis Coop and the unit that did all that flying stuff.
Yeah.
So he very much had his own crew, and we hardly ever anything we did flying wise we did for real, basically. So
yeah. The only other person I wanted to mention on the film was continuity, Elaine Sherrick.
Shrake, yeah, she's up.
We just saw her a few weeks ago.
The Countess.
She's 97.
I've just been shouted at by my ex.
We just had lunch with her a few weeks ago. She's 97.
She's 97 years old.
Fit as a fiddle.
And as bright as ever.
Oh, wonderful.
No, she's marvelous.
She's always been somebody that I would love to talk to, but I've never found anybody that's in contact with her or anything like that. So
yeah.
I have her number. I can give it to you.
Oh, that would be
yeah.
She has so much history and she is so sharp. She remembers everything.
I'll be frozen at the moment here.
Oh.
Just 1 second, if you can hear me.
Lovely relationship.
You froze for a second.
So
I think Madeline could give you
we had lunch with her. She's fit as a fiddle. Everyone's asking her about Marilyn Monroe. She remembers everything, and she probably would be delighted to hear from you.
Oh, I would be delighted as well. That we'll talk. Yeah, I'll drop you an email about that one. That'd be lovely. Because Richard Donner got on very well with her, didn't and called the Duchess.
No,
she loved him.
Yeah.
And Peter didn't mention we went to Dick's memorial.
Oh, right. Yes.
In LA. Mm-hmm. And there were 20 people speaking, but we had to go to another. We had to go to Barbara's birthday that day, and then we went down there. There were 10 people left, but everybody gave tributes to Dick, and it ended with Eric Idle singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life."
Oh, how lovely! Yeah.
And everybody was crying in the audience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. This is you kept in touch with Richard Donner over the years, and
yes.
Oh, we used to have lunch with him and dinner with him. Also, Dick was the producer. Well, his wife owns the X-Men, so Peter did Wolverine.
Yes.
and he took over as director. And then Dick came out, and I used to go, we used to go out in his convertible, and he ate hamburgers, and he's a wild guy. I love Dick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I obviously was aware that he had the production company was involved in the X-Men, so I assume that's how you kind of got onto to Wolverine. Just to finish off,
that's Lauren's baby. She owns it. She sold it, but that his wife owns the franchise. But
oh
she
right.
sold it.
Yeah. Did you say she's now sold it, or she still owns it?
Sold it for a couple of billion.
Yeah, she needed the money. Yes, she is.
Well, every little helps, doesn't it? Just to finish off, Peter, I just had some audience questions come in. We still have our audience are still with us, so that's great. If you guys have any last minute questions you want me to put to Peter, please write it in the chat and I'll put them to him. The questions that I had come in, well, David asked about the blackout. Of course, you already covered that, and he did say it was Wednesday, the July 13th, 77. So that puts the date there for that. And David just wanted to thank you for your outstanding work on Superman and your photography and your work as second unit on the Batman films. So
that's very kind of him. Thank you.
On to you. And we had a question from Ginzalo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He just wondered if you could just share some brief memories of A Bridge Too Far.
Brief.
Just maybe one highlight, but
I think my thing that kept me awake most was the parachute drop, and I can't remember how many cameras we had, but with the flying stuff on the Dakotas or parachuters with cameras hanging all over them, I think we had 25, 26 cameras on that sequence, you know. And of course, the first day we shot it, the weather was shit. And I had to persuade Richard Attenborough, because it was very, very expensive, that we had to go again the following day. And it was, Dick was also not only director, the producer, so he knew the financial implications. Anyway, we did shoot it twice. And the second day, the weather was much better, and we got some really fantastic stuff. And it's a sequence I'm very proud of, because you really believe, and in my opinion anyway, what it's like to be up there in that Dakota. And my favorite shot was the handheld shot, walking down behind and jumping out with them. I didn't jump out, obviously, the cameraman did. And you realize, you know, that was only the beginning of their fucking adventure, because as they landed, that bit's done, and now they got to survive and fight with what they carried on their back, the German battalions. You know, so that was, to me, was one of the most interesting telling sequences that I ever worked on, because you were determined, and we had people with us that had actually done the jump. One had lost a leg.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we determined to make it as real as possible. And I must say I'm very, very proud of, you know, what we did then. And also the fact that, you know, Dickie Attenborough, as not only director producer, found the money, because it's much more expensive than it's supposed to be, to make it as perfect as we could, and I think did, you know. Yeah.
And Gonzalo also wanted to know just something very brief about the Orient Express, Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh, that was working with Sidney Lumet is an experience everyone should have once in their life. Sidney's like lightning. He doesn't, I think he wears out a pair of shoes every week. He never sits still. His mind is like the whole time. The actors love him. He doesn't take bullshit from anyone. And if you have an idea, you have to be sure it's a good idea. You
Right.
don't go up to Sydney and say, oh, by the way, I think, and I learned my lesson quite early on, that you say it's a good idea, but do you think if we did this instead of that, if you're criticizing basically what he originally thought, you've got to be very sure of yourself. And I say we had a really tremendous relationship. I had huge regard for him, and all the actors just adored him. You know, he was definitely a one-off. I don't think something like that is ever going to appear again, personally.
Oh yeah, certainly. And is there any last closing comments you'd like to make about Superman before we wrap things up?
No, I just feel that we did the very best we could, sometimes in spite of the production office. And I think everyone's respect for Dick Donner made it work. You know, we had a huge respect for Dick. And I just wish we had less of a battle with the producers about getting enough money to make it the way we wanted to.
Oh yeah.
You should also mention Jim Bowers, who's keeping Dick Donner's legacy alive single-handedly.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that because you know more than I do.
Did you hear me, Philip?
Well, I did. Yeah. Jim has actually attended one of my events before. He's keeper of the flame, isn't he? Really.
He worked with Dick Donner for years and years, and he's got all of the archives, the personal archives of Dick, and he keeps sending Peter all these beautiful photographs that no one's seen before. So he just invested his life into keeping Dick Donner's memory alive and the legacy of Superman. So he's so knowledgeable, and he's also so generous with all his photographs and everything that Dick Donner gave him, because Dick Donner's company and Lauren, they're so busy with other things that they kind of bypass that. But Jim Bowers is keeping that alive. If people love Superman and want to see more, they really should go on to Jim Bowers' website.
Oh yeah, for those that don't know, his website is capewonder.com, and he also is selling, I think, a print to order coffee table book from the first two Superman films. There's wonderful photographs we're talking about, and it's a must for any Superman fan. So get your copy if you haven't already done so. We did have a very last minute question, if that's all right, Peter. Any memories of Sean Connery?
From what I have many memories of Sean Connery.
Yeah,
I think my favourite was on a film called Zardos. Anyone heard of that?
Yeah, it's quite infamous, isn't it? Yeah.
John Borman, and Sean has to basically play the whole film in a red diaper, red nappy. And then John Borman has seen this Borneo tribe that covered herself in mud that turned to clay. And he thought that's a great look. So he said, well, we'll test Sean with all this clay on him. Well, Sean is one of the hairiest people you're ever going to meet in your life. He's very much like a gorilla. I can say that now because Sean's not with us. So we covered him in his clay, had heaters on him. And of course, that heated up and started flaking. He started pulling all the hairs out of his back, his chest. And he was one very angry man. And he said, no fucking way I'm going to play this fucking part like this. You know? So he had the red nappy, but he wouldn't have the clay, which I can't say I blamed him, because when you work in Ireland, in the where we were, I mean, it rains almost 20 hours a day, and he'd have just been like a lump of mud running around. But I was lucky I did about 5 films with Sean, including one of his very first ones. So we had a very good relationship, and he was one of the meanest men in the world. Of course, he was unbelievably tight, even for a Glaswegian. But he was a great character, and I have a lot of love for him.
Oh, good. And I can't let you go, Peter, without asking about your Lifetime Achievement Award you recently collected. What was that like?
Embarrassing.
Oh,
I don't know. No, it's very touching, and it's a very.
It wasn't in Italian. He forgot to have it say it in Italian.
It was in Italy. No one understood what I was saying anyway, but it was very nice, very, as far as I concerned, undeserved. I think I tried to say that. I had Madeline behind me doing interpretations, but it was a good experience, and what I never thought would ever happen to me, to be quite honest.
well, no, very well deserving, yeah, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Peter, for joining
My
me
pleasure.
for the evening. Everyone's very appreciative of your time and answering their questions. So I think everyone enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank anyone that's watching. Thank you.
Well, indeed.
And good night.
Good night. Take care, Peter, and perhaps talk later.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.